Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic for the day is how to know you've outgrown your existing software systems and get started on your digital transformation. A little bit of a mouthful, but what we're going to walk you through is some telltale signs to watch for as you're evaluating your business and the systems that are running it, and then a strategy to deal with that. A little bit about me first. My name is Darren Redies. I'm the Director of Pre-Sales and Solution Design at The Answer Company. So I've been working with companies doing this at The Answer Company since 1999. And over the years, have gained some insights into some approaches that work and also what doesn't work. So I'd like to share a little bit of my experience with you today, and hopefully you'll find this of value to you as you look to move your business forward. So our agenda for today then is, first of all, I'm going to go through 5 signs that I look for that indicate you've outgrown your existing software systems. By no means comprehensive, but 5 key ones that often jump out. And then some ways to kickstart your digital transformation. I'll wrap up by letting you know just a little bit more about the Answer Company and what we do. So, first of all, the big question, have you outgrown your software? And that, there's a few phrases that might even be kicking around your office. Things like somebody saying, that's not the version I've been managing to, or I just don't have time for analysis. This is certainly something that I see frequently, where there's really no time for people to find out what's really going on in the business, because you're just stuck trying to get things done, trying to just get data into the system. So you've got really no time to make use of that data. Joe is the only one here who understands the model. Always a big risk when you start relying on individuals in the information that they hold and they alone hold. It's halfway through the month and I don't have last month's data yet. Clearly, it's hard to rely on data for decisions if you're having to wait weeks in order to get that data. We know that business environments are dynamic, that you need to be able to move quickly. And if you're continually having to wait for data, it's a clear sign that your system is letting you down. When did you send it out? I can't find it. Communication between individuals and departments is one of the key things that we look to take care of. But I will say that really the fundamental question before you even start looking at this is, how much pain are you feeling? It's really up to you to determine if you are feeling enough pain to go and take the time to move to the next level. So it's many times, we can work with you within the constraints of your current system to try to find opportunities to scale up and to increase efficiencies. But there are those times when you've just clearly outgrown and it's time to move onwards and upwards to the next tier. So I'm going to go through then 5 signs that indicate we're probably beyond this point where we can just leverage what you've already got. So the first one that I've listed here is if you're using more than 90% of the available functionality, and I recognize that this one's a bit counterintuitive, because a lot of times over the years, I've had people tell me things like, it feels like we're only using 50 or 60 or 70% of the system, pick a number. And they realize there's so much more in the system that they could be using. But I know they're telling me this like it's a problem, but really the opposite is true. You always need room to grow and room to scale. And no system is going to be completely in step with what you need unless you build it yourself. So even if we're talking about 2 companies in exactly the same industry, their needs are going to be slightly different because they each have different ways of competing in the marketplace. So the functionality then that you're going to use is going to be different as well. So what's important when you look at where you're at and with your system is that there is room for you to continue to grow. If you're using everything that's available in the package, it's going to be challenging to find new efficiencies as you encounter new challenges in the business. Number two, you've been blindsided or had a near miss. Three of the items that I would put as subcategories within that are things like inventory counts with large corrections, wildly fluctuating revenues or margins, or missed deadlines. Like, all of these are really scary, and when they happen, they can often trigger a review, and they're a clear indicator that something's wrong. So when I think about companies that I've been into where the inventory corrections at the end of year are into the seven-figure range, I just know that the CEO is looking at this and is really questioning then the controls that are in place. Whether this is positive or negative, it clearly shows a lack of control going on. And in terms of revenues and margins moving around, always there are ups and downs, there's trends. But when things start swinging around widely, it makes me wonder, shouldn't there have been a way to be able to see this coming? Was there something that could have been done if the company was aware of this sooner? But if you don't have access to meaningful and timely information, it's hard to make course corrections quickly enough to keep your ship from floundering the squalls. This is where we're talking about if you're not getting your data until multiple weeks after a period end, how are you going to be able to make those kind of changes then quickly? How do you anticipate? And missed deadlines too. When these all of a sudden appear, if you're missing things like project deadlines, shipping deadlines, procurement deadlines, it's worth asking: is this because we just don't have a way of monitoring these things? So number three in my list is that you've stretched the system into a Frankenstein. And I want to point out at the beginning of this presentation, I said that we often can work within your current framework to find new efficiencies. So, sometimes this means bringing in things like a third-party add-on or doing a customization, and these can be a great way to leverage the system. However, there are times when this just goes too far. And you can tell when a system is becoming a Frankenstein when a few things usually start to happen. The first is that the value of the system is no longer from the actual ERP. And what I mean is that you get to a certain point where the system that is enabling the growth is actually the add-ons. The core that's there isn't really doing anything for you anymore. And add-ons are great at increasing the strength of a solution, but at its center, the ERP itself needs to be adding something. It needs to be in alignment with what you're trying to do. The other thing that we see is that the number of add-ons or customizations makes upgrades difficult or impossible. And it's the fear of this that sometimes keeps people from even exploring add-ons or customizations. And I would say that that's a healthy fear to some degree, because we've seen where people are using a 10-year-old version of software because upgrading was going to cost almost as much as the original implementation. But when that's the case, not only are you not getting any of the new functionality being released from the publisher, but you're potentially opening yourself up to security risks by staying on an outdated platform. And finally, integrations are frequently breaking. So, even if things were pretty rock solid when these integrations were first created, as the number of connections continues to grow and data starts to grow on this, you can start to stretch them beyond their limits. And you often see a lot of finger pointing at this point, where one party saying, "Oh, well, it can't be our integration. We've got this in place in dozens of other companies." But really, the reason that this can be starting to happen is it's the combination. So it's not any one integration in itself, but it's the 15 of them all combined together that start to cause you grief. So number four, the user interface is affecting your ability to bring in new people. And please understand, I'm not saying you should change ERPs just because a new one has prettier screens, far from it. I'm very much an advocate for function over form. But at the same time, you do reach a point where an old system can start to have a real financial impact. And you start to see this in a few different ways. One is that training becomes very difficult. So as you bring in new people and work on bringing them up to speed, what does that look like? How much time and money are you spending to get those individuals working effectively in the system? We also see where users just plain and simple get dissatisfied and do start to complain about the interface. If you're on a green screen terminal, the user interface is going to start to be an issue as your employees are just trying to do their job. Older systems like that, it's hard to learn. It often requires a bunch of specific keystrokes, and it can be really frustrating to your people. And at a certain point, this starts to make it hard to attract and retain talent. So the cost of recruitment and training needs to factor into your equation if people are leaving because of your systems. And remote access difficulties. So this was one that's really had the spotlight shone on it. I mean, it used to be a nice to have, and it was in the category of something employees like to have. In the last year and a half, it's taken on a whole new meaning and could have its own slide almost. We've seen, companies coming to us because of the fact that having remote access became the only way they could run their business during some of the lockdowns. So we know people switched systems because it was too hard to set up remote access on an old system. And while things are starting to open up now, we do see this move now to remote workforces. It's no longer just a nice to have. It becomes, again, one of those ways if you want to attract and retain talent, this is going to be more and more of a factor in being able to attract that talent. And, I'd like to think that we're through the lockdowns, but certainly we still see a lot of disruption going on. So one that I've got here as when you start serving the system instead of it serving you, people think about humans serving the machines in movies like The Terminator or The Matrix, but the truth is we do see it in real life. This is when people start expending so much time and energy just simply because that's what the system needs. But it can also happen when your system is too big. I talked about having something that you can scale into. It is possible to also be in something that's not right sized, in that it is really just too big and too cumbersome for your company. Having your system right sized, but with room to grow, is what you need to avoid this. So signs of this happening can include when, first of all, when data entry, when getting data into the system costs more than the value it provides. So take a look at what you do with the data you're gathering and what decisions you're making based on it. And then I always like to try to assign a dollar value to those decisions that you're making in your organization. Then you can balance that with how much time, how much effort does it take to gather or to extract that information? Sometimes this is more where it's trying to get data out becomes where all the effort is. But it's something where you can usually do a bit of a study, determining how many hours are being spent to really get the information and then balance that with the value of the decisions you're making. So there's often improvements to be made both in the capture as well as the extraction of that information and turning it into meaningful information as opposed to just data. And we also see where sometimes the system is the roadblock rather than the tool to overcome obstacles. This is supposed to be something that you're using to help you, but if you can see better and more efficient ways of doing things, but it's just not possible in your current system, it's worth a conversation. And I mean, we've been streamlining business processes for a lot of years. There's a good chance that we've seen something like this before and can guide you to a solution. So to recap then, the top 5 signs that you've outgrown your tech stack. Number 1, that you're maxing out the functionality, using more than, say, 90% of the available functionality in your platform. Errors, corrections, and missed deadlines, what I talk about when you're blindsided. Number 3, when you're overstretched, and what I mean is you're stretching that system beyond really what it was really intended for. User dissatisfaction, number 4, where the user interface is becoming a real issue. And number 5, that cost value equation, where really the cost of getting the data either into the system or out of the system outweighs the value of that data to your organization. So, ready for a digital transformation. These are all signs that you are likely ready. It's then a big process and a somewhat daunting one to determine, okay, we know that we need to make a change. How do we go about doing that? And this is where I will talk a little bit about some of the sins that we've seen happen and continue to happen in organizations. Some of the things I would suggest you want to avoid as you're looking to start your digital transformation. So the traditional approach when we look at this, that a lot of companies feel is, that the way to approach this is, first of all, you go and you launch the project, you start collecting requirements, and you select a vendor, and then you plan your implementation, and it all seems quite logical. And you go and understand, what are the options out there for you. And importantly, in that phase 1, we talk about defining the metrics and the elicitation and prioritization of the requirements. And then you go and you develop your RFP, you deploy the RFP, you look at the vendor responses, and you develop the script that you want the vendors to show you to get an idea of whether they're going to meet your requirements or not. Unfortunately, this approach is fundamentally flawed. And please understand, this came from the best of intentions, where people wanted to be very objective, and they wanted to make sure that everybody was on an equal playing field. But the problem is, it's not an equal playing field. Different vendors have different levels of expertise in different industries and are able to help you with different things. Your requirements aren't just a list of software features. They're things that your business needs to do, and they have different levels of value to the organization too. First of all, when you go to elicit from your various stakeholder groups, you ask them for their input, what you tend to get is a list of features. And often this is based on systems that these people have worked on before. And it's great to get those new perspectives, but sometimes the scale or even the industry is so different that they just don't even belong in your list. If your customer service department is being headed by someone that used to work at TELUS, you don't want them scoping out the same ticketing solution for your company when you've got annual revenues of 10 million. What's important is to think about what it is you're actually trying to solve here. I do have just a little pop culture snippet here to share with you that helps to illustrate the problem with going and getting these wish lists.
All right, you eggheads! I want a place in this car to put my drink!
Sir, the car has a beverage holder.
Hello, Einstein! I said a place to put my drink! You know those super slakers they sell in the Quickie Mart? The cup is this big!
Extremely large beverage holder.
I'm not done yet. You know that little ball you put on the aerial so you can find your car in the parking lot? That should be on every car!
Little ball.
And some things are so snazzy they never go out of style, like tail fins and bubble domes and jag carpeting. I want a horn here, here, and here. You can never find a horn when you're mad. And they should all play La Cucaracha.
Can do, Mr. S.
And sometimes the kids are in the back seat. They're hollering. They're making you nuts. There's got to be something you can do about that.
Maybe a built-in video game would keep them entertained?
You're fired! What is my brother paying you for?
What about a separate soundproof bubble dome for the kids, with optional restraints and muzzles?
Bullseye! And another thing, when I gun the motor, I want people to think the world is coming to an end. Rum, rum, rum!
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the car designed for the average man, the Homer.
Any questions?
What does this monstrosity cost?
Jerry, what's the sticker price? $82,000! This monstrosity cost $82,000! What have I done?
So even worse than the wish list from your users, we see these RFP checklists come out, and these are things where everything becomes like what I would term a shiny trinket. They all look appealing on some level. So when you're taking a look at a list of items, and this is something that gets searched for on the web all the time, is give me a list of features that I should be looking for in software. But the problem is, again, how much benefit can an organization actually realize from each of these features? Because they're very different from one to the next, depending on what you're trying to do. And when you're looking at a list like this, they lack any dollar value being attached to it. You're just going and you're picking based on gut instinct in terms of an appeal. There's no ROI attached to this. So it leads you into a solution potentially where you end up with $50,000 solutions to $500 problems. So it confuses rather than clarifies the fit of either the vendor or the solution. So what should you do instead then if you're not going to just go through an RFP checklist? The first step is really to go and to map out your processes. And this is to go and get an idea of what you're currently doing. And yes, it's going and saying, what's in your current system, because not everything is broken. You need to know what you're doing that's actually working as well. But the next step that starts to come out of that is to identify the challenges. So as you're mapping out those processes, start to look for what's not working. And then we can start to think about ways and strategies to start to deal with that. So now you can start to look at those problem areas, and some of the things that we often look for is where you see overly complicated processes. So you're mapping things out. I do like the use of visual process mapping. It often brings a fair bit of clarity to this. But then you're going and starting to see where you've got information flows that are going nowhere and are really not even being used. Once you've mapped out the processes and identified the challenges, now it's time to start setting goals and to start to define an ROI. So please understand that I'm talking about business goals here. So don't confuse goals with features and requirements. So anything that the software does is a feature, not a goal. So a quick example, creating customer invoices is a requirement. Emailing those invoices to customers is a feature. Improving cash flow by 10% is a goal. So to achieve the goal, you may decide that you need to email invoices, which is a feature, as part of the strategy to increase cash flow. Too many goals and it doesn't sharpen the focus, it instead dilutes it. So you think, oh, well, isn't detail good? But detail is good when it comes down to the processes developed and the software features used to achieve the goals, but not when it comes to defining goals. I like to keep these usually to around 3 to 5. And the one thing that we say about these goals is the goals for successful ERP implementation should be concise enough to fit on a t-shirt. Simple, easy to understand, things like decrease costs by X%. Increase revenue by X%, expand to whatever geography it is you're looking to move to. And then stick with the high level goals. Don't just keep on adding to them all the time, to try to rationalize something. The goals define the scope of the project. Adding goals increases the scope of the project and it dilutes the focus of your resources. Once you've got your goals defined, then you can start to determine what's your strategy going to be. That's the requirements. And then finally, we go and we're taking those requirements and looking for a solution that's going to allow you to do that. So if the goal is to improve cash flow, we trace the requirement of emailed invoices to the goal and the feature of electronic document management to the requirement. The difference of taking this approach as to going and picking off of a list is that the feature might not be what you first thought it would be. But the key is that because it properly addresses the business requirement and that requirement is linked to the goal, Now you are finding a strategy, and often a very creative strategy, to solving that problem. And it's by using different features or a combination of features. And this is where an implementation partner with experience will be able to see numerous different ways. They have a good idea of what's going to work best for you based on your current situation, but they also know which ways are not going to work for you. All right, just a little bit more on defining business goals. I thought I'd just throw out some of the common business challenges that we see out there that often can form some of these goals as you're looking to take on one of these projects. So I took this from something from Aberdeen Research, a few years old, but hasn't changed that much. And some of the common business challenges that we see people needing to take on are, first of all, things like reducing costs. 39% of participants in this survey were talking about that. Need to manage growth expectations. We work with a lot of growing companies, and this is where when we talk about that scalability, it's when you're growing by whatever factor it is year over year, we can recognize a challenge. So if you're going to say that our goal then is to grow the company by 30% over the next 3 years. That's a great goal, and then we need to look at the strategy in terms of how we're going to handle that. Increased competition. So this might be where we identify this as a challenge, and then we're starting to determine, well, what are our strategies going to be to meet that competition. And lack of collaboration internally or externally, this is one that gets a little bit more murky, in that I usually like to break this down and actually start looking at what the effect of that is on the business. Does this mean that we've got things that are being missed? Does this mean that we're just spending too much time trying to communicate? Does this mean that we're having to have team members purely to be going and running as messengers? How does this actually spell out? And then nonetheless, the concern is valid. And then changing customer needs and changing business models again. So in determining, how is it that the business needs to shift, and then starting to map out a roadmap as to how we're going to go and manage that shift then. So again, as I say, try to go and find what the key goals are, and I usually look at 3 as about right, 3 high-level goals. You just can't take on 10 critical business issues as part of a project. It becomes too diluted, and then stick with those goals. Don't just keep on adding to them. So when we look at your digital transformation journey then, as it relates to meeting those goals, there are some ways that digital transformations are allowing companies to do this. So these are things that on their own mean nothing, but as they start to allow you to meet these business objectives, become very powerful tools for you. So first of all, things like unifying your data, making sure that everything is connected and that there are no disruptions, because this is where we're starting to be able to go and get meaningful insights. Now, where we need to focus those insights and the key areas that we need to make sure are unified may change from company to company. The employee experience too, and this is more in terms of how to make sure that this digital transformation journey is successful. We need to know that we are going to get a high level of adoption. We need to manage the learning curve, and we need to take into account the capacity and the team's skills. So it's as we're mapping out a strategy, then now we need to be taking these into consideration. And as part of that, when we're looking at the bigger picture, it's really going and taking a look at who the stakeholders are. I like to include a stakeholder analysis as part of this, where first of all, we're making sure that we're identifying everyone that needs to be considered as part of this transformation, either because they are actually requiring something new, or we're thinking about what the impact is on individuals and departments based on the kind of changes that we're making. And then we can start to think about, again, that employee experience, managing capacity, learning curve, and adoption amongst each of those stakeholder groups. So other considerations as you're going through, we're starting with the business goals, and we're going through and we're determining requirements. And ultimately, though, this is absolutely going to end up being mapped to a solution where we're starting to get down to features. A couple of things that to keep in mind. One is if you're using a best-in-class system, there's often now included what they will call a marketplace. So going and looking to that marketplace for specific things, for specific features, for specific functions that address some of these requirements is a great place to start. Definitely make sure that you're making use of these as you're looking to try to grow your solution. And engage with a technology partner to help. I mean, obviously this is where we come in. So, from reevaluating your overall tech stack to going and determining things like, what you should be taking from the marketplace, where you should be looking at customizations. This is what we do every day, and we're absolutely here to help guide you through that path. And I would say, one of the key things that we see as being a key to success for this is to look beyond functionality and performance, but also to look at partners that have similar values to you. You are engaging in a very significant relationship as part of this. These need to be companies and individuals that you're going to be comfortable with working with, and where you are both on the same page looking forward. So with that in mind, we'll share a little bit about us at the Answer Company, what we're all about. We've been doing this since 1994. And we've grown significantly over those years. We now have over 2,000 clients and over 120 team members in 6 offices across Canada and the US. So the number of ERP implementations that we've done actually is in excess of 2,000. Because what we've seen is we've had customers that have been with us since the very beginning, and they've actually gone through at times a couple of solutions as they've grown. And we've grown over the years through a number of acquisitions, but we also continue to grow organically significantly as well. In the past year, we had 115% annual growth. We are the #1 partner for both Sage and Acumatica in Canada currently. The other item that we'll bring up is our volunteer hours. So once a quarter, we go out as a team out to a charity of choice and go and volunteer our time. And every employee is also given another 4 days per year to donate to a charity of their choice. This is something we believe in strongly. We talk about people first, and what we mean is that we value our own people, we value your people and the relationship that we have with them. We also value the people in our community. So when we look at those solutions that we work with, we do work with a number of other Sage products that we would consider legacy products, but really the 3 that we continue to see a lot of activity with right now are Sage Intacct, and it's a very strong cloud solution. Some of the verticals where we see Sage Intacct working very well are things like SaaS companies, not-for-profit, healthcare, professional services, educational institutions, hospitality industry, First Nations. They are moving very quickly into the construction area now as well to have a great solution for some construction companies, biotech. media and advertising. Sage 300 used to be known as ACPAC. It's been around for a long time. It continues to be a very popular product, especially in Canada. We have a number of customers, first of all, in the construction space in Sage 300 CRE, and then also in verticals like financial services, distribution companies, educational institutions, again, not-for-profit, First Nations, and professional services. Acumatica is a newer solution, also a cloud solution that we took on a few years ago. It's a very fast-growing solution. We're very impressed by the functionality that they have and that they continue to add. So the key areas where we see Acumatica as a great fit right now are, first of all, in wholesale distribution, discrete manufacturing. Also, they are developing some real strengths in process and batch manufacturing as well. For field services companies, construction, they have a fantastic offering for the construction industry, financial services, and for retail and e-commerce companies. And finally, Sage X3, or what was known for a while as Sage Enterprise Management. This has been a very strong offering from Sage for a number of years, especially in some key areas. So agricultural companies, food and beverage, chemical producers, pharmaceutical and nutraceutical, wholesale distribution, mining companies, and financial services. We're very proud of some of the recent awards that we've received as a company. We do have a very strong commitment to our employees and to developing a high trust, positive workplace. And we're very proud that we've been recognized for that, having been certified as a great place to work and identified as one of the best workplaces in British Columbia, and in professional services, as well as being identified as one of the best workplaces for giving back. It's something we believe strongly in, and we are very happy to be recognized for it. And as I mentioned, we are recognized within the Sage and Acumatica community as well, too, as a top partner for them. So within Sage, we are what's known as a Platinum Elite winner. This is awarded on a global level, so we are one of their top partners in the world. And as an Acumatica Gold partner, we are at the pinnacle of success with them as well, too. We have a lot of expertise and a lot of experience with both Sage and Acumatica that we bring. Also very happy to be recognized as only one of 5 VARs on Bob Scott's top 100 VARs, proving again to be exceptional leaders in the field. And we were also recognized for the last 4 years, actually, as one of the top 100 fastest growing companies in BC. So if you have questions, please reach out to our team. I'll close by saying that our purpose of the Answer Company is to propel companies forward, and we would love to have the opportunity to talk to you and your team to help define what forward means to you and to create a strategy to get you there. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us on our website. My email address is on screen there if you'd like to reach out to me directly. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.